She ordered acid poured on my 6-year-old. She stood there, watching, arms crossed, smiling, all because of chalk. All because a 6-year-old dared to draw sunflowers on the sidewalk. Karen didn't warn. She struck. She burned. But she made one mistake. She turned a mother into a weapon. Now I'm coming for everything she built. Her board, her name, her freedom. You think it ended with handcuffs? Think again. What we uncovered next was bigger than chalk, deeper than scars, and darker than anyone was ready for. The chalk dust still lingered in the afternoon light, soft and pastel against the pale concrete. My daughter, Lily, 6 years old, was crouched with fierce concentration, her little fingers gripping a pink stick of chalk like it was a magic wand. She was drawing sunflowers today, big, beaming ones, with smiling faces and wobbly stems. I watched from the porch, coffee growing cold in my hand, heart swelling at the simple joy of it. Then she appeared, Karen Madsen, HOA president, cold-blooded, polished, and power-drunk. She strutted down the sidewalk like she owned it, red heels clicking, clipboard clutched like a weapon, oversized sunglasses hiding eyes that never blinked. She stopped right at the edge of Lily's masterpiece and sneered. "You've been warned, Grace," she snapped, not even glancing at me. "Sidewalk defacement violates Code 3.7. Again." I stood, slowly, my voice cut like a whip. "She's a child, drawing with chalk. That's not defacement. That's joy." Karen turned, that smug smirk spreading like rot. Joy? To you, maybe. To the HOA, it's visual pollution. I stepped off the porch, clenched fists at my side. "You send letters. You take photos of a 6-year-old like she's some kind of criminal. What's next? A citation for breathing too loud?" Karen didn't flinch. "If that breathing disrupts visual harmony, yes." My blood boiled. Lily looked up, wide-eyed, sensing the shift in air. "You don't scare me, Karen," I hissed. "You'll back off. Now." Karen leaned closer, whispered us loud enough. "This street doesn't belong to you, Grace. Not anymore." And just like that, she turned and walked off, heels stabbing the pavement with every step, as if erasing Lily's flowers one click at a time. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment war began. And I would burn the rulebook she worshipped, page by page, before I let her touch my daughter again. 2 days passed. 2 quiet, seething days. Then the envelope arrived, sealed, official, HOA letterhead, gleaming like a threat. I didn't even open it before I knew. I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. But Karen wasn't done. That evening, while Lily was brushing her doll's hair on the porch, a man in a reflective vest showed up. Tall, wiry, sunglasses on at dusk. He didn't speak to me, just paced along our sidewalk, scribbling notes onto a tablet. Then he crouched, inspected a faint chalk petal still lingering from Lily's drawing. "She's 6, I snapped from the doorway. "And it rained last night. That's not defacement. That's childhood." He didn't respond, just muttered something into a radio clipped to his shoulder and walked away. 30 minutes later, Karen showed up. She didn't knock, just let herself into the yard like she paid the mortgage. "You're escalating this, Grace," she said, lips tight with self-importance. "I tried to handle this quietly, but your refusal to comply has forced our hand." I stepped between her and Lily. "You've got a problem with chalk, Karen? Take it up with Crayola." Karen pulled out her clipboard like it was a judge's gavel. Per HOA Resolution 4.9, all decorative residue on common access walkways must be removed within 48 hours. Failure to comply authorizes the board to initiate corrective cleaning. "Common access?" I laughed bitterly. "That's my sidewalk. My property line runs 6 feet from the curb." Karen leaned in, voice venomous. "We'll clean it, Grace, with or without your approval." I stared at her, heart pounding. She turned on her heel and walked off, coat flaring behind her like a villain in a courtroom drama. I held Lily tighter that night. And when I checked the HOA's budget report the next morning, a new line item had appeared. Surface remediation, expedited chemical removal. My hands trembled. She was planning something, and I wasn't going to let her get near my daughter again. If you knew the second Karen walked onto my property, pointed at Lily's drawing, and called it visual pollution, that she wasn't just enforcing rules. She was planning something cruel. Type 8 in the comments. Because that wasn't about chalk. It was a setup. The air was too quiet that Saturday. Not peaceful, staged, like the calm before a house explodes. Lily was outside, cross-legged, humming to herself as she drew on the sidewalk. Her cowco, giraffe, wore a birthday hat and glasses this time. She was giggling to herself, completely unaware. I watched from the window. Something in my gut twisted. I should have pulled her in. I should have listened to that inner scream clawing up my spine. Instead, I turned to pour a cup of coffee and heard her scream, the kind of scream that freezes the blood in your veins. I dropped the mug. It shattered on the floor. I ran. Lily was collapsed on the sidewalk, writhing. Smoke was rising from her legs and arms. The colors of her chalk drawing were bubbling, melting into her skin. And standing over her, holding an empty container, was a man in an HOA vest. Karen stood a few feet away, arms crossed, sunglasses on, watching, smiling. I roared. "What the hell did you do?" The man flinched. Karen didn't. "She was warned," Karen said flatly. "We're enforcing code." I dropped to my knees, scooping Lily into my arms. Her skin was blistering, her dress soaked in acid and tears. "Oh my God. Baby, stay with me." Lily couldn't even cry, just shallow breaths and wide, terrified eyes. "You poured acid on a child!" I screamed. Karen tilted her head. "It's a concrete-safe chemical solvent. The label says non-toxic." "Do adults, maybe." "You targeted her. You knew she was there." Karen didn't deny it. She didn't say a word, just lifted her phone and started typing. I snapped. I stood up, Lily in my arms, blood and skin sticking to my shirt, and I marched toward her. "You watched my daughter burn." She was defacing a shared surface. She was drawing with chalk. She was 6, and now you've scarred her for life. Karen stepped back, her face twisted, not in guilt, but in annoyance. "I suggest you calm down before you make threats that get you removed from the HOA entirely." I took one more step. "If my daughter dies, I swear on everything I have ever loved, you will not see sunlight again." Sirens wailed down the block. Neighbors poured out of their homes, frozen in shock. Someone was recording. Good. Let them all see what she did. Let the world watch Karen Madsen stand over a burning child like a queen, defending her pristine little kingdom. Let them hear Lily's whimpers. Let them see the melted chalk. And let them remember, this wasn't an accident. It was a decision. A line crossed. A war declared. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Lily was inside, strapped, sedated, barely conscious. Her legs were wrapped in white gauze, pink, from blood seeping through. The paramedic's voice still echoed in my head. "We're treating for chemical burns, possibly 2nd or 3rd degree." My hands were trembling. Her blood was on my arms, her skin still stuck to my shirt. And Karen was still here. She hadn't left. She stood on the edge of the lawn, arms folded like a statue of contempt, talking into her phone like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just overseen the torture of a 6-year-old child. I marched across the grass. Someone tried to grab my arm. I shook them off. "You watched her scream." Karen didn't even flinch. "The solvent was scheduled for application today at 3 p.m. Your daughter was in a restricted area." "She was on our damn sidewalk." "Sidewalks are HOA-regulated common ground." "You think that gives you the right to pour acid on a child?" Karen's tone was ice. "Your failure to maintain boundary awareness does not constitute negligence on my part." "You gave the order. I saw you nod. You knew she was there. You knew she was drawing. And you still said, 'Do it.'" She turned to me, slowly, with that same hollow smile she wore the day she first threatened us over chalk. "You're unstable, Grace. Maybe you shouldn't be raising a child at all." That broke something in me. I launched forward. Not to hit her. I didn't even know what I intended. But I moved. 2 neighbors grabbed me, held me back. My fists clenched so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. "Let me go!" She stood there and watched my daughter burn. Karen stepped backward now, just a half step. But I saw it. The flicker. That sudden shift in her eyes. For the first time she felt it. Fear. I pointed at her. "You smile now. You hide behind codes and clauses. But I swear, by the time I'm done with you, you'll be the cautionary tale they whisper about in board meetings. You'll be the stain that never washes off this neighborhood." Phones were out. Neighbors recording. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Karen, ever proud, fixed her blouse and said flatly, "You're trespassing on HOA property." I laughed. Loud. Bitter. "Good. Let the lawyers write it down. Let the jury hear it. I'll make sure they play that line back while they show pictures of my daughter's skin being eaten alive." She said nothing more. She walked off. But her heels weren't clicking anymore. They were dragging. And I knew, deep in my bones, she was starting to feel it. The fire she lit? It was coming for her now. The hospital lights buzzed overhead. Too bright, too cold. Lily lay in the pediatric burn unit, unmoving. Her tiny hands wrapped in gauze. Her legs raised. Monitors beeped softly beside her, oblivious to the hole in my chest. I sat there for hours, motionless, watching the IV drip like a countdown. Not crying, not breathing, just burning. Karen did this, and I was going to bury her with her own signatures. I pulled out my laptop right there in the hospital waiting room, fingers shaking, jaw clenched. I opened the HOA's online archives. Password protected? Cute. I built military-grade decontamination systems. Firewalls didn't scare me. 2 hours later, I found it. A budget line added just last week. Surface remediation. Expedited chemical removal. 1,700. Vendor. EcoStrip Solutions. I cross-referenced the vendor. Industrial solvent distributor. Registered for commercial use only. Required municipal approval for public applications. Karen had none of it. I printed everything. Photos, invoices, chemical reports, HOA meeting notes, where she declared, phosphoric compounds are safer than water. I wasn't done. I contacted the vendor directly. This is Grace Keller, chemical engineer, former federal contractor. One of your products was just used on a child. She's in the ICU. I suggest you tell me who authorized the purchase before I subpoena every document you've ever filed. The man on the other end stammered. It was Karen Madsen. She picked it up herself, said it was for graffiti control. I recorded the entire call. Then I called the local news. 3 hours later, a camera crew stood in my front yard. I didn't need to cry, didn't need to scream. I just held up a photo of Lily's bandaged legs and said, this was the cost of chalk. This was a 6-year-old punished for drawing flowers. And this woman, I held up Karen's HOA photo, approved a military-grade solvent to erase childhood from a sidewalk. It went viral overnight. Karen tried to spin it, of course. She released a statement calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding. She had the audacity to say, we all grieve for Lily, but compliance is not optional. I fired back in front of reporters. This wasn't grief. It was policy weaponized, power abused, and I'm just getting started. Behind me, the entire block had gathered. No one said a word, but one by one, they began taping drawings to the sidewalk. Rainbows, hearts, dinosaurs, sunflowers. Karen didn't realize it yet, but this wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about all of us, and I was going to be the voice she could no longer silence. 3 days after the news broke, I thought Karen would finally retreat, but I underestimated the delusion of a woman who's never been told no. She didn't apologize. She didn't hide. She launched a press conference, a folding table, a red HOA banner, a row of board members like puppets. And Karen, standing front and center in a white blazer like she was the Virgin Mary of suburbia, spoke with perfect, rehearsed cruelty. The incident involving young Lily Keller is deeply regrettable, she began, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. However, this HOA cannot function under emotional blackmail. If we allow graffiti, yes, even from children, we set a precedent for chaos. Chaos? My daughter's skin peeled off her legs. She wasn't finished. We urge residents not to participate in disruptive protests or unauthorized sidewalk decorations. Compliance is peace. Compliance is order. I stood in my living room, shaking. Then the phone rang. A neighbor, a friend. Whispers spread like fire. HOA was passing a new emergency rule. All sidewalk artwork to be reported and erased within 24 hours, or the property owner faces fines up to $500 per day. They were silencing chalk. They were erasing grief. They thought they could choke out a movement by threatening bank accounts. I grabbed my jacket, stormed outside. Half the block was watching the live stream, eyes wide, jaws tight. I looked into the nearest phone camera and spoke slowly. Karen Madsen just declared war on children, on expression, and on memory. Let her fine us. Let her try to wipe our sidewalks clean. She can't erase what we remember. You want compliance, Karen? I said directly to the lens. Then comply with criminal court subpoenas. Because guess what? I held up the vendor contract I'd printed that morning. You forged the authorization. You signed chemical delivery under a non-existent committee. That's fraud. And I just filed a federal complaint. You want to play fire with chalk? Let's see how you handle subpoenas drawn in ink. The next morning, I woke up to a printed flyer shoved in our mailbox. Remove the art or face HOA legal action. It wasn't signed, but the font, the phrasing, it was Karen's venom. I didn't take it down. Instead, I added something. I taped Lily's drawing, scanned, enlarged, laminated, on the front door. Her sunflowers, her crooked smile, her world before it burned. And underneath it, I wrote in bold red marker, "You erased the chalk. You will never erase her name." The neighborhood was watching now. And Karen just lit a match in a dry forest. She had no idea how fast this fire was about to spread. The courthouse was packed, not in a tabloid circus way, no flashbulbs, no screaming headlines, but in that heavy, humming silence that only comes when people know they're about to witness something permanent. I sat in the second row, Lily's drawing folded in my coat pocket like a sacred vow. She was still in the hospital, but stable now, finally able to eat, finally able to smile when the nurses made terrible balloon animals. I told her I'd fight in her place today. She just whispered, "Make it loud, Mommy." Karen arrived 15 minutes late. Of course she did. White blazer, dark glasses, clipboard, that same smug mouth twisted into what she probably thought was confidence. She didn't look like a defendant. She looked like she was auditioning to lead a parade. And yet, even with all that posture, I saw it. The shake in her fingers when she set down her documents. The fire was reaching her now. "We'll now hear argument in Keller vs. Madsen," the judge announced. Judge Franklin, stone-faced, no-nonsense, military veteran turned circuit judge. The kind of man who probably scared hurricanes into changing direction. My attorney started with calm precision. "Your Honor, we will demonstrate that the defendant, Karen Madsen, acted with deliberate negligence and malicious intent when authorizing the use of industrial-grade chemicals on a public sidewalk, knowing a child was present. We will further show that she misused HOA funds, falsified records, and attempted to silence community dissent with retaliatory fines." Karen's attorney, a slimy man with a $2,000 suit and the morality of a wet sponge, stood. "We maintain this was a tragic accident. My client acted within her authority to maintain community standards." I stood up. "Bullshit!" the courtroom gasped. The judge's gavel slammed. "Mrs. Keller, you will sit." "I will. But let me say this first." I turned, locking eyes with Karen. "You called what happened to my daughter a tragedy. That word implies it was fate, that it just happened. No, you made a choice. You signed the forms. You nodded at the man holding the chemical jug. You watched my child scream, and you didn't flinch." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. The judge didn't stop me. "You weaponized policy. You covered your hands in ink and called it justice. But that ink dripped down onto my daughter's skin. And now, every time she looks at her legs, she'll remember your name." Silence. Then my lawyer approached the screen. "We'd like to submit Exhibit C, video footage from the neighbor's security camera." The screen lit up, grainy but clear. Lily drawing, the HOA contractor walking up, Karen in the background, arms folded. Then, the nod. And seconds later, Lily screaming. The room held its breath. Karen turned pale. Her lawyer whispered something. She didn't blink, didn't speak. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Madsen, do you deny giving authorization for the chemical application on that date?" She tried to recover. I didn't know the child was—" "Objection," my attorney barked. "Intent is irrelevant. The harm occurred. The order was signed." Judge Franklin nodded. "I've seen enough for today. This court will move to trial. All charges, including civil liability and criminal negligence, will proceed. Until then, you are barred from issuing any HOA directives. Effective immediately." Karen froze. You can't do that," she hissed. "I just did," the judge replied. She turned to me, eyes wild, lip twitching. "You think this is over, Grace?" I stepped forward, voice cold, steel. "No, but you just lost the one thing you loved more than power, control." And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Karen lost her voice in court, but she hadn't lost her venom. The next morning, someone defaced Lily's laminated drawing on our front door. They didn't tear it down. They smeared black paint over her sunflower, just enough to obscure the smile. Cowardly, silent, cruel. But I recognized the paint. Same shade Karen used for her decorative border compliance stencils. Same brand sitting in the HOA storage shed I used to help maintain before I saw the rot underneath. She wanted to send a message, so I sent one louder. I rolled out buckets of sidewalk chalk in front of my house and set up a folding table. Lily's classmates came first, then neighbors, then strangers from other neighborhoods. People brought snacks, music, folding chairs. By noon, the entire block had transformed. Dinosaurs, stormtroopers, Bible verses, pride flags, veterans' logos. One little boy drew a rocket ship and wrote "Fuel for the fight" underneath it. No one asked permission, because this was ours now. And when a new HOA flyer was slipped into my mailbox, unsigned, of course, it read, Section 12.6 prohibits gatherings without HOA approval. Cease immediately. I marched to the HOA office and stapled the flyer to the door. Right next to it, I taped a blown-up version of Karen's subpoena. Let's see which rule the court respects more, I muttered. Karen didn't show her face for 2 days. Then, like clockwork, she struck again, through proxy. HOA board members started quitting, one by one. Quiet exits. No statements, no emails. And then came the letter. Typed. No logo, hand-delivered. Dear Ms. Keller, due to your actions inciting community unrest, you are being reviewed for permanent removal from the association registry, effective pending vote. Signed, Acting Interim President, HOA Compliance Committee. Karen wasn't just clinging to power. She was rebuilding it in the dark. I crumpled the letter and tossed it. Then I picked up my phone and hit record. Karen Madsen is trying to remove me from my own neighborhood for defending my daughter. She poured acid on a child. She lost in court. And now she's crawling back behind fake committees and unsigned letters. She thinks we'll break. So let's break something else. The system that lets people like her hide behind rules. By morning, the video had 1 million views. And outside, someone had drawn a massive message across the sidewalk in red chalk. You erased the chalk. You couldn't erase us. That afternoon, I wheeled Lily out in the sunlight for the first time. Her legs were still wrapped, but her grip was strong when I handed her a piece of purple chalk. She bent down slowly and drew a single, wobbly sunflower and whispered, Mommy, can she paint over this? I smiled. Let her try. The final vote wasn't held in a boardroom. It happened in the park. The same park where Karen once banned hopscotch because the lines were too disruptive to foot traffic. Over 200 residents showed up. Teachers, veterans, teenagers, parents with babies and strollers. And in the center, a stage with 2 chairs. One was for the mayor, the other was for Lily. She wore a white dress with sunflowers stitched across the hem. Her legs still wrapped, her steps still shaky, but her spine straight as steel. Karen tried to show up, wearing her red blazer, wearing defiance like perfume. But this time, no one clapped. When she walked past the chalk mural, now sealed in protective laminate with Lily's name carved in bronze, she flinched, because her legacy wasn't the policies. It was the scars. When Lily stepped up to the mic, the entire park hushed. She didn't speak loud. She didn't need to. I thought drawing flowers was okay. She said it wasn't. But when I got hurt, you all drew them for me. She looked at Karen, eyes unwavering. You tried to erase me, but I'm still here. Silence. Then thunderous applause. Karen turned pale. She tried to leave quietly, but someone stopped her. Judge Franklin, wearing civilian clothes, arms crossed. You're not going anywhere. The criminal trial starts next week, and the city's launching an ethics probe into your entire board history. Karen's jaw trembled. No clipboard, no camera, no control, only consequences. That night, I sat beside Lily on the porch. She held a piece of blue chalk, not to draw, just to hold. She's really gone, isn't she? Lily asked. I nodded. And she's not coming back. Lily grinned. Then can we draw as big as we want now? I smiled. Baby, we always could. It started with chalk, just chalk. A 6-year-old drawing sunflowers on a quiet sidewalk. But power doesn't need a reason, only an excuse. Karen didn't just pour acid on a drawing. She poured it on innocence, on trust, on the idea that children can feel safe being seen. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Because the worst kind of evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles politely. Sometimes it wears a clipboard. Sometimes it calls itself the rules. But here's what Karen didn't count on. She didn't count on a mother who refused to bow. She didn't count on neighbors choosing community over compliance. And she certainly didn't count on a 6-year-old girl with wrapped legs and a purple stick of chalk, drawing again. Because when you try to erase a child's voice, you don't silence it. You amplify it. And what started as one drawing became a movement. One scream became a courtroom. One sidewalk became a symbol. So maybe the lesson isn't about HOA policies or even punishment. Maybe it's about remembering that your voice matters, even when someone powerful tells you it doesn't, especially then. Because the world changes not when power enforces silence, but when the silenced speak louder than fear. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone like Karen? Someone who hid behind rules to do harm? What would you have done if it were your child on that sidewalk? Tell me in the comments, even if it's just one word, even if it's just the number 9, to show you made it all the way to the end. And if Lily's story moved you, if it made you angry, hopeful, or ready to stand up for someone else, then do 3 simple things. Hit subscribe, tap like, share this video with someone who still believes in decency, because no child should ever bleed for being joyful, and no mother should ever fight alone. This isn't just a story, it's a reminder. Sometimes justice starts with a single piece of chalk, and someone brave enough to pick it back up.